My name's Joseph Mitchell. I'm a 46-year-old lawyer living in Denver, Colorado, and I thought I knew what loyalty meant. For 18 years, I'd walked through the glass doors of Hartwell & Associates every morning at 7:30 sharp, coffee in hand, ready to fight for justice. The law firm sat in downtown Denver's business district, with a view of the Rocky Mountains that never got old. I was proud to work there. Proud of the cases we won, the clients we helped, and the reputation I'd built as one of Colorado's most reliable corporate attorneys. My corner office on the 15th floor was modest but comfortable. Family photos lined my desk. My wife Sarah, my twin daughters Emma and Grace, now 17 and heading to college next year. Everything I did was for them. The 60-hour weeks, the weekend research, the late-night case preparations, it was all worth it to provide the life they deserved. Richard Hartwell, the firm's founding partner, had been like a father figure to me. When I joined fresh out of University of Colorado Law School, he took me under his wing. "Joseph," he'd say in that deep Texas drawl of his, "you've got the instincts of a champion. Stick with me and we'll build something great together." For years, I believed him. I brought in major clients, tech startups, real estate developers, even a few Fortune 500 companies looking for Colorado representation. But lately, something had changed. Richard's handshakes felt colder, his smiles more forced. In partner meetings, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence or dismiss my suggestions with a wave of his hand. The other junior partners started avoiding eye contact. Even Margaret, the receptionist who'd been there since the Carter administration, seemed nervous around me. I told myself it was just stress. The legal market was competitive, and maybe Richard was feeling the pressure. After all, I'd helped build this firm into one of Denver's most respected practices. My client billings alone brought in over $2 million annually. Surely, after 18 years of dedication, of missed family dinners and canceled vacations, I'd earned some security. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. The closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to, the way conversations stopped when I entered the break room, the subtle shift in how people treated me like I was already gone. But I was about to learn that loyalty in corporate America is often a one-way street, and that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones sharpening the knife for your back. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reviewing a contract for Pinnacle Technologies, one of my biggest clients, when Richard's assistant knocked on my door. "Mr. Hartwell wants to see you in his office," she said, avoiding my eyes. That should have been my first red flag. Richard's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful Denver lawyer. Mahogany desk, leather-bound law books, and a massive window overlooking the city. But something felt different that morning. Cold. Richard sat behind his desk, not bothering to look up from his papers when I entered. "Joseph, sit down," he said, his voice lacking his usual warmth. "We need to discuss your performance." Performance? I'd just closed the Morrison merger last month, a deal worth $15 million to our client and nearly $500,000 in fees to the firm. "Is there a problem with the Pinnacle contract?" I asked, genuinely confused. "It's not about one case," Richard replied, finally meeting my eyes. "It's about your overall contribution to the firm. Some of the partners have concerns about your dedication lately." My stomach dropped. Dedication? I've given this firm everything. "Richard, I've been here 18 years. My billable hours are among the highest in the firm. My client retention rate is—" "Numbers aren't everything, Joseph," he interrupted. "Leadership is about more than just doing your job. It's about being a team player, supporting the firm's vision for the future." That's when I noticed James Peterson sitting in the corner, Richard's nephew, fresh out of law school 2 years ago, with his Harvard degree in perfectly pressed suits. James had been shadowing me for months, supposedly learning the ropes from a senior associate. Now he was smirking like he knew something I didn't. "What exactly are you saying?" I asked, my lawyer instincts kicking in. Richard leaned back in his chair. "I'm saying that perhaps it's time for you to consider whether your future lies elsewhere. The legal landscape is changing, Joseph. We need fresh perspectives, new energy." Fresh perspectives, new energy. Translation, younger and cheaper.
I left that meeting feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. 18 years of loyalty, of building relationships, of growing this firm from a small practice to a regional powerhouse, and this was my reward? Walking back to my office, I noticed how the other attorneys quickly looked away. Margaret handed me my messages without her usual smile. That night, lying in bed next to Sarah, I stared at the ceiling and realized that my job, my career, my identity was hanging by a thread. The next few weeks were a masterclass in corporate humiliation. Richard began excluding me from client meetings I'd been handling for years. The Morrison Group, a client I'd personally brought to the firm and worked with for over a decade, suddenly requested that James Peterson take over their account. When I confronted Richard about it, he simply said they wanted fresh blood on their team. Fresh blood. At 46, apparently I was ancient. The breaking point came during the monthly partners meeting in April. I'd prepared a comprehensive presentation on expanding our intellectual property practice, something I'd been researching for months. As I stood at the head of the conference table, outlining the potential revenue streams and client opportunities, I watched Richard's face. He looked bored, checking his phone, tapping his pen against his legal pad. "Joseph, while I appreciate your enthusiasm, we've already decided to focus our expansion efforts elsewhere." He gestured toward James, who was sitting at the table like he belonged there. "James has prepared an alternative proposal for our corporate restructuring services." I felt the blood drain from my face. Corporate law was my specialty, the area where I'd built my reputation. "Richard, I've been handling corporate law for this firm since before James was even in law school. Yes, we know. But times change, Joseph. Our clients are looking for attorneys who understand the modern business landscape." James stood up, his presentation materials perfectly organized, his PowerPoint slides crisp and modern. As he began speaking about innovative legal solutions and millennial business perspectives, I realized what was happening. This wasn't about my performance or dedication. This was a systematic replacement. After the meeting, I overheard James talking to another junior associate in the hallway. "Uncle Richard says the transition should be complete by summer," he said, laughing. 18 years is a good run, but it's time for the old guard to step aside." Uncle Richard. Of course. That evening, I sat in my car in the firm's parking garage for over an hour, unable to face going home and telling Sarah what was happening. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, 18 years of my life's work crumbling around me. I'd missed countless family dinners, worked through holidays, sacrificed time with my daughters, all for a man who was now treating me like yesterday's newspaper. But as I sat there in the dim light of that concrete garage, something began to change inside me. The hurt was transforming into something else, something sharper, something that would serve me well in the weeks to come. Everything changed on a Friday afternoon in late April. I was cleaning out my files, preparing for what felt like the inevitable, when I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Buried in a stack of old contracts was a partnership agreement from 2019, one I'd never seen before. It outlined a deal between Richard Hartwell and Pinnacle Technologies, my biggest client. According to the document, Richard had been receiving personal consulting fees from Pinnacle, fees that should have been disclosed to the firm and shared with the attorney of record. That attorney was me. For the past 4 years, while I'd been building their legal strategy and saving them millions in regulatory compliance, Richard had been secretly collecting kickbacks, totaling over $800,000. My hands trembled as I photographed every page with my phone. This wasn't just unethical, it was a clear violation of the Colorado Bar Association rules and potentially criminal. Richard hadn't just been planning to fire me, he'd been stealing from me, using my client relationships to line his own pockets. But that wasn't the worst part. As I dug deeper into the firm's financial records, records I had access to as a senior associate, I found a pattern. Richard had been systematically billing clients for work I had performed, then funneling those fees into a personal account. The Pinnacle deal was just the tip of the iceberg.
That night, I sat in my home office until 3 a.m., my laptop screen casting shadows across the room. Sarah had gone to bed hours ago, but I couldn't sleep. I was building a case, the most important case of my career. By dawn, I had documented over $2.3 million in misappropriated fees and fraudulent billing practices spanning the past 5 years. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed leverage, and I needed it fast. That's when I remembered something from law school, a lesson about corporate acquisitions that most attorneys never use. If you can't beat them, buy them. I spent the weekend researching Hartwell & Associates' corporate structure, outstanding debts, and market valuation. The firm was privately held, struggling with cash flow, and Richard had been borrowing against the company's assets to fund his lifestyle. They were vulnerable. If you're rooting for Joseph and want to see how this corporate revenge unfolds, hit that subscribe button, because what I discovered next would change everything. And Richard Hartwell was about to learn that firing the wrong lawyer can be the most expensive mistake of your life. By Monday morning, I had a plan that would turn the tables completely. Monday morning, I walked into the office with a different energy. While Richard was preparing to destroy my career, I was quietly assembling the pieces of his downfall. The first call I made was to Marcus Chen, a former law school classmate who now ran a private equity firm in Chicago. Marcus specialized in distressed asset acquisitions, exactly what I needed. "Joseph Mitchell," Marcus said when he picked up. "It's been ages. What can I do for you?" "I need to buy a law firm," I said simply, fast and quietly. There was a pause. "Your own firm?" "Something like that." Marcus laughed, but I could hear the interest in his voice. "Send me the financials. If the numbers work, we can move quickly." That afternoon, while Richard was in court and James was playing golf with potential clients, I accessed the company's complete financial records. What I found was even worse than I had expected. Hartwell & Associates was hemorrhaging money. Richard's personal expenditures, the new Tesla, the Aspen condo, the country club memberships, had been funded through firm accounts. The company was carrying nearly $1.8 million in debt, disguised through creative accounting. But there was opportunity in that chaos. The firm's client list was worth at least $5 million. The downtown office lease was below market rate, and the reputation, despite Richard's corruption, was still solid. With proper management and ethical practices, Hartwell & Associates could be profitable within 6 months. I spent Tuesday gathering documentation and Wednesday meeting with Marcus's acquisition team via video call. They moved with the efficiency I remembered from law school. Marcus never let opportunities slip away. By Thursday, we had a preliminary offer, $3.2 million for a complete buyout, contingent on due diligence. The beautiful irony? Richard's own greed had created the perfect storm. His debt-to-asset ratio was so poor that he'd be forced to accept any reasonable offer. He was drowning financially, and I was about to throw him an anchor instead of a life preserver. Friday afternoon, I received the call that I'd been waiting for. "Joseph," Marcus said, "we're ready to move. The legal documents are being prepared. We can have an offer on his desk by Monday morning." "Make it Tuesday," I said, checking my calendar. I have a feeling Monday is going to be a very interesting day around here. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but smile. Richard thought he was firing me. In reality, he was about to hand me the keys to his kingdom. That weekend, something fundamental shifted inside me. For 18 years, I'd been playing by someone else's rules, seeking approval from a man who saw me as expendable. As I sat in my home office, preparing for what would either be my greatest victory or spectacular failure, I realized I'd been thinking too small. Sarah found me there Sunday morning, surrounded by legal documents and financial projections. "Joe," she said softly, using the nickname only she was allowed to use, "what's really going on?" I looked up at my wife of 22 years, this woman who'd supported every late night and weekend sacrifice, and decided she deserved the truth. I told her everything. Richard's betrayal, the stolen fees, the systematic humiliation, and my plan to buy the firm. "How much?" she asked simply. $3.2 million. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, the same smile that had convinced me to propose all those years ago. "Do it," she said. "It's time you worked for someone who appreciates you." That afternoon, I called my daughters down to the living room. Emma and Grace, 17 and preparing for college, had always known their dad worked hard, but they'd never understood why I seemed so stressed lately. "Girls," I said, "I need to tell you something important. Your old man is about to become his own boss." I explained the situation in terms they could understand, how sometimes people don't treat you fairly, how you have to stand up for yourself, and how this wasn't just about money or revenge, it was about integrity. "Dad," Grace said, "does this mean you won't have to work so many late nights anymore?" "That's exactly what it means, sweetheart." Monday morning, I dressed differently. Instead of my usual conservative navy suit, I wore the charcoal gray Armani that Sarah had bought me for our anniversary, the one I'd been saving for special occasions. Today felt plenty special. Walking into the office, I felt like a different person. The nervousness was gone, replaced by calm confidence. I wasn't Joseph Mitchell, the expendable senior associate, anymore. I was Joseph Mitchell, future owner of this law firm. And every slight, every humiliation, every condescending comment from the past months had led me to this moment. Margaret looked up as I passed her desk. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," she said, with genuine warmth, the first time in weeks. "Good morning, Margaret. It's going to be a beautiful day." I meant every word. At exactly 9:15 a.m., Richard called me into his office. James was already there, sitting in the chair I'd occupied just weeks earlier, a smug expression plastered across his face. This was it, the moment Richard had been building toward for months. "Joseph, please sit down," Richard said, his voice carrying that false sympathy I'd come to recognize. "This is never easy, but sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for the good of the firm." I sat calmly, my hands folded, watching him deliver what he clearly thought was a devastating blow. "After careful consideration, we've decided that your services are no longer required at Hartwell & Associates. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." James leaned forward slightly, unable to hide his satisfaction. "We'll need your key card, office keys, and any firm property by end of business today," he added, clearly enjoying his moment of power. Richard slid a severance package across the desk. 2 weeks' pay and continued health insurance for 60 days. I think you'll find it's quite generous given the circumstances." I looked down at the paperwork, an insulting final slap after 18 years of dedication. Then I looked back up at Richard, and for the first time in months, I smiled. "That's interesting timing, Richard," I said calmly, "because I have something for you, too." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "These are acquisition papers. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Hartwell & Associates was purchased by Mountain West Legal Partners. The sale is complete, the funds have been transferred, and all existing employment contracts are now void." The color drained from Richard's face. "That's impossible! I would have had to—" "I did," I interrupted, sliding the documents across his desk. "Your signature is right there on the corporate resolution from last Tuesday's emergency board meeting, the one where you voted to accept our offer because your debt-to-asset ratio left you no choice." James' mouth hung open. "What are you talking about?" I stood up, straightening my jacket. I'm talking about the fact that you just tried to fire the new owner of this law firm. Richard, you're relieved of your duties effective immediately. James, your employment is terminated for ethical violations and nepotism. Richard's hands shook as he flipped through the legal documents. This can't be legal. You can't just... I can and I did. 18 years taught me everything I needed to know about running this place. The only difference is I'll do it honestly. The silence in Richard's office was deafening. He sat staring at the acquisition papers, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally, defeat. James had gone completely pale, the smugness evaporating like morning fog. "This is impossible," Richard whispered, his voice cracking. "The firm is worth more than what you sold it for." I interrupted. "Richard, your creative accounting finally caught up to you. When you're carrying nearly $2 million in debt disguised as assets, you don't get to negotiate from a position of strength."
I walked around to his side of the desk, his former desk, and opened my laptop. "Would you like to see the forensic accounting report my team prepared? 4 years of skimmed fees, fraudulent billing, and client kickbacks. The Colorado Bar Association is going to find it fascinating reading." Richard's shoulders sagged. For the first time since I'd known him, the great Richard Hartwell looked small, defeated. "Joseph, please, we can work something out. I made mistakes, but destroying me won't—" "I'm not destroying you, Richard. I'm holding you accountable." I pulled out another set of documents. "Here's what's going to happen. You have 2 choices. Resign quietly, forfeit your partnership interest, and I won't file criminal charges for the embezzlement. Or we can do this the hard way, and you can explain to a federal judge why you've been stealing from your own firm." James finally found his voice. "You can't do this to us." I turned to him, my expression hardening. "James, you're 28 years old with 2 years of experience. The only reason you had a job here was nepotism. In the real world, you'd be lucky to make paralegal salary at a 3rd-tier firm." Richard signed the resignation papers with a trembling hand. "The clients will never accept this," he said desperately. "They trust me, not you." "Actually," I said, checking my phone, "I've been calling our major clients all morning. Pinnacle Technologies is thrilled to continue working with the attorney who actually handled their cases. That would be me. Morrison Group said they're relieved to have someone ethical managing their account again. And the Denver's real estate portfolio? They specifically requested that I personally handle their expansion into California." Margaret appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Mitchell, the staff is gathered in the conference room, and the new business cards arrived. Your name is already on the door." I looked at Richard one last time. 18 years, Richard. You taught me everything I needed to know about running a law firm, including how not to treat the people who make it successful. 2 years later, I'm sitting in what used to be Richard's office, now mine, watching the Denver skyline light up in the evening twilight. The nameplate on my door reads, "Joseph Mitchell, Managing Partner," and the brass lettering on the building directory now says, "Mitchell & Associates Legal Group." The transformation has been remarkable. Our client base has tripled. Word travels fast in Denver's legal community, especially when it involves a David and Goliath story like mine. Attorneys who'd heard about the buyout started referring cases to us, impressed by someone who'd outmaneuvered corporate corruption with pure legal skill. We've expanded to 2 floors, hired 8 new attorneys, and our annual revenue has increased by 340%. But the best changes aren't financial. I leave the office by 6 p.m. every day. I haven't missed a single one of Emma and Grace's soccer games this season. When Grace graduated as valedictorian last spring, I was there in the front row, not stuck in some conference room billing hours. Emma starts at University of Colorado in the fall, following in her old man's footsteps, and she jokes that she wants to be just like Dad, the lawyer who bought his own revenge.
Margaret still sits at the front desk, but now she greets everyone with genuine warmth instead of corporate anxiety. Mr. Mitchell runs this place like a family, she told a prospective client last week. People matter here. I implemented profit sharing for all employees, transparent billing practices, and a strict ethical code that every attorney must sign. We have monthly team meetings where everyone's voice is heard, not just the partners. The culture transformation has been as important as the financial success. Sarah and I renewed our vows last month on our 24th anniversary. I married a lawyer, she said in her speech, but I'm celebrating with a man who remembered who he really is. Last month, I heard through the Denver legal grapevine that Richard was working for a small family law practice in Colorado Springs, making about 1/3 of what he used to earn. James moved back to Boston, where he's struggling to build a practice without his uncle's connections. Sometimes justice isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just quiet consequences for bad choices. Looking back, getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop seeking approval from someone who didn't deserve my loyalty and start building something that reflected my own values.
As I finish telling you this story, I'm reminded that sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the catalysts for our greatest triumphs. When Richard Hartwell fired me after 18 years, he thought he was discarding dead weight. Instead, he was unleashing someone who finally understood his own worth. The lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about resilience. It's about recognizing when you're being undervalued and having the courage to bet on yourself. For years, I'd accepted scraps from Richard's table, grateful for whatever recognition he threw my way. I'd confused loyalty with subservience, dedication with desperation. But when you've been knocked down as hard as I was, you have two choices: stay down and let them win, or get back up and show them exactly what they lost. I chose to rise, and in doing so, I discovered capabilities I never knew I possessed. Today, Mitchell & Associates employs 43 people who know their contributions matter. We've handled landmark cases in corporate law, environmental litigation, and civil rights. Emma is thriving in law school, telling everyone about her dad who legally stole his company back. Grace is studying business administration, planning to join the firm after graduation. Sarah has started her own consulting practice, inspired by watching me take control of my professional destiny. The firm continues to grow, but more importantly, it operates with integrity. Every client knows their attorney's name, every employee feels valued, and every case receives the attention it deserves. We've proven that ethical business practices aren't just morally right, they're profitable. Richard thought 18 years of experience could be easily replaced by fresh blood and family connections. He learned, too late, that experience isn't just about time served, it's about relationships built, trust earned, and expertise developed. You can't buy that at any price, and you can't replace it with a business degree and good intentions. Thank you for watching Joseph's story till the end. It means the world to know that people still believe in justice and accountability in the workplace. If you loved this story of corporate revenge and professional redemption, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Tell us in the comments what you want to see next: more workplace revenge stories, family betrayal tales, or relationship drama. And if this story inspired you to stand up for yourself in your own career, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that our worth isn't determined by other people's opinions.